All right. Hey guys, I just wanted to take some time and go over a few different options you guys have for creating an AI assistant that converts leads for you. So this is for an assistant that is going to take a lead that you already have. You've already had someone fill out the form on Google or on Facebook or whatever on your website, and you take it from that point until they're a scheduled customer through automation. So you're not touching it at all. Basically is able to replace your either yourself or your office staff. So a couple things we're going to go over. We're going to go over the cost and ease of use comparison of each of these tech stacks. And by tech stack, what I'm talking about is, for example, you can do automations on Zapier, but you don't just use Zapier. You also have to have some additional pieces of software to make this work. Twilio, for example. You also need OpenAI. And in this case, I recommend Airtable since it may be the easiest to use. So we'll go over some costs for all of those for each of those stacks, and then we'll also go over the cost for software, like I said, and how easy it is to build on each of those. So we're going to go over Zapier, we're going to go over building it on Make, we're going to go over building it on N8N, go high level, and lastly, but briefly, custom code, which we're going to assume you're hiring somebody to do that. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Then we're also going to break down all the features that, in my opinion, you're going to need to have in this automation that are going to need to be parts of it, so you can be confident that you're maximizing the number of customers that you close. You're not leaving anyone hanging or leaving customers knowing that they're talking to a bot and just not responding or something like that. So we're able to really make a good, robust automation, AI automation that's able to not only take these leads and turn them into customers, but really, really do it at a higher level. So cool, that's what we're gonna do. So first, let's go ahead and look at the cost and ease of use. So like I said, we've got Zapier, and this is the one you're probably the most familiar with. Zapier is great when you're using one or two automations, but as soon as you start to do more than that, it gets really complicated really fast, and you don't have a whole lot of ways to be able to keep track of where things are going wrong. So if you set up something wrong, you're not necessarily going to know what that is or what's going wrong, which it just gets really messy really fast. I probably wouldn't recommend this for that reason, just because of how complicated it gets. You're going to have like 10 different workflows, each with at least 10 different actions on them that are all working together. And like I said, just gets really messy. I wouldn't recommend it. Next is Make. This one is a lot better. It's a lot more visual. It's one of the easier stacks to work with. Uh, I would it's more technical, so it's a little bit tougher than Zapier, but with what we're doing, you're going to need to be a little bit more technical. So I would recommend Make over Zapier. And then the next one is N8N. This is similar to Make in a lot of ways, but it takes the technical side even further. You can pretty much do anything you want in N8N. This is the one that I would probably recommend for this. I think it's also the best in general if you are technical enough or want to actually learn how to do it. There's a pretty big learning curve to be able to get to the point where you understand how to use this. It's going to take probably quite a few hours just to get it down and then before you even really get started. But then again, all of this is going to take, there's going to be a learning curve with all of these realistically. And technically, anything you can build in here, I think you can build in Zapier too. But like I said, it's the error handling and just the fact that you have everything separate makes this quite a bit more difficult. So I think the pros here outweigh the pros here. And then let's see, and then you also have go high level. And this is maybe the most, I would say this is the most simple out of all of them. A lot of people can put something together with this in like a day. This has but like anything that you can put together really easily, the reason that you can put it together really easily is because it's very, very simplified. And because Go High Level is so simplified for doing automations, you don't really you don't have a lot of flexibility in a lot of ways. There's not a You're limited in customization. You can't do any sort of A/B testing on your messages if you're using the conversation AI, which is uh, really the way to go if you do end up using this. Otherwise, it's it's worse than it's more all over the place than Zapier. You're gonna have tons of different. The build is gonna look like Zapier if you're not using conversation AI. So if you use Glow High Level, conversation AI is the way to do it. Like I said, you got limited customization. You can't do any A/B testing on messages. So if you want to test out how you present your quote, if you want to test out and see if it's better to offer $500 for, say, for your initial service and you're discounting it down to 150 versus saying that you're just doing a free initial service and which of those two things hits better, which of those two things the customers are more likely to sign up doing, you can't do that. Uh, that's probably a bad maybe a bad example, um, but you can kind of get the idea. Like a lot of these messages are just going to be a little bit trickier. Maybe a we'll kind of go over this a little bit more so you can see more of what I mean with this A/B testing. But I think just being able to swap out messages and swap out how the automation is actually talking with customers, having more control over that is really important, especially if you want to have a personalized feel. You just can't do that with Go High Level. It's just you just tell the bot what to say and then it says whatever it's going to say. So it's very, very limiting. And then the calendar is very limited too. You can't, which is really important with scooping because you don't want to have a visit that's scheduled at exactly 1 o'clock and you're a half hour away. You have to drive a half hour and get to do this service and then go back. So you want to be able to go there anytime during the day or like schedule it for a morning visit or an afternoon visit. You really can't do that in Go High Level. So, like I said, limited customization. So while this is very nice, its limitations make it a bad choice, in my opinion, for a home service like ours, where we do recurring services, where we're actually quoting them and actually scheduling them on the app. If it's something simple and all we're doing is just scheduling somebody for an appointment where we're going to go and give them a quote at their house later, like HVAC or roofing or something like that, then Go High Level works great. But because we're doing everything before we even closing them via text, I don't recommend this. Cool. So there's Go High Level. Last one, like I said, is the custom code option. And this is where you find a developer who knows how to use some legit code, and you're going to pay him to do everything from the ground up, him or her. And if you do this, it's going to cost you a lot of money, probably 50,000 or more, because it's going to take them a really long time to do. If they're not, but chances are, if you do hire someone who's doing custom code, they're going to be using one of these options that I have listed above. So you're going to want to ask them what they're using. But like I said, 50,000 really, there's other tools out there where you can do the exact same thing. So I don't think this is an option that really makes sense now that there's been so much innovation in AI. But cool. So those are all your different stacks. Now I'll go over the pricing a little bit and everything that you're going to need with each stack to create this. So with the Zapier stack, you're going to need obviously a Zapier account. You're going to need Airtable, and this kind of acts as your CRM and to save your conversation history. You're going to have a conversation history, otherwise it's just not going to work. So you need an Airtable. You also need an OpenAI account or whichever LLM you prefer. I think OpenAI is the best or the easiest to set up. All of them are like they're similar. They're comparable price wise. So I can't really say that you should use one or another more than the other, but this is just kind of people's favorite. Everybody loves ChatGPT. ChatGPT was made by OpenAI, so you'll be in good hands here. And you also need a Twilio account if you don't use another service like OpenPhone. I always recommend people to get OpenPhone, but if you don't have OpenPhone or you'd rather not use that, then you can set up a Twilio account and you can send and receive messages using your Twilio account and save the conversation history here on Airtable. But yeah, so that's how that is going to work. Now the make stack, it's similar. You got make, you got Airtable, OpenAI, Twilio, N8N. You got N8N, Airtable, OpenAI, and Twilio. Again, that's Twilio or OpenPhone. And with Go High Level, you're just paying the fixed Go High Level plan, plus the conversation AI, which ends up being a total of $146. And then you have whatever the messages are going to cost you on Twilio. So, all right, now that we've got that, let's go ahead and do a cost breakdown and kind of sum everything up at the end after that. So, we're gonna make some assumptions here. I'm gonna give you some prices for closing 10 customers a month, 50 customers a month, and then 100 customers a month. And we're gonna make the assumption that you're closing about half of those. So it might actually cost more than this if you're closing less than half of your custom of the leads that are coming through. But for each of these tiers, you're looking at your Zapier account is going to be about $89 for these 20 because you're going to have a lot of tasks that it's going through. Airtable is going to cost you $20. OpenAI roughly $10, let's say. It's not going to be more than $10, I would say. And then Twilio for sending those messages back and forth is going to be 120. And so your total is going to be about $120 per month. So these are all prices, total prices or cost to you out of pocket per month. So if you get 10 customers, if you're averaging 10 customers per month and you use the Zapier stack, it's going to cost you $120. If you're getting 100 customers every month, it's going to cost you about $231 per month just to keep your automation up and running. For make, prices are a little bit different. You can see they scale up. The cost to make is a little bit less than Zapier, so you end up spending a little bit less for those three different options that we were looking at. And then for N8N, it costs just a little bit less than make, and so these are some prices you're looking at. Now, so one thing to keep in mind is when you're looking at those prices, also you need to be thinking about two things. You need to be thinking about the how complicated it's going to be because of the tech stack they're using, but you also need to be thinking about the the cost of each of these things together. So this one, and like I said, since this is so complicated, you're it's really like generally Zapier is one of the easiest things to work with, but with what we're actually going to be building, it's going to be so complicated that you're not you're not actually, in my opinion, saving anything on time by you're not actually simplifying anything. So not only are you paying more, but you're not simplifying anything either. So I would I personally would just write off Zapier as an option. It's just doesn't really make sense. Frankly, you're probably gonna get to a point where you're in the middle of building it and just get frustrated because you're getting some sort of an error and you don't know what to do because it doesn't have good error handling and you're just gonna give up. So but if you want to try this out, go for it. Let me know. I'd be curious if anybody tries this out to see how well it works for them. And make this has much better error handling. Uh, like I said, it's more technical as well. It's going to take quite a bit of time to get this made. Um, but you got a lot, it makes a lot more sense cost wise. So, like I said, if you're closing 100 customers a month, it's going to cost you about $130 per month to keep that running. N8N, it's going to cost you less than $100 to keep that one up and running. And this one is where you can really, like I said, you can really actually get into the nitty gritty and make it do and say everything that you want. But because it is more technical, you're going to run into more errors where you have to fix things a little bit more regularly. But once those things are fixed, it's going to be running super smoothly. So price-wise, you're saving a lot, but time-wise, it's going to be uh, it's going to take a lot more time to build than, or it's just going to take more time to build than say in Make. So I would, depending on what you're looking for, I would recommend either making it in Make if you are a little bit less technical, but if you don't mind doing something that's more technical and really making it as good, the best automation possible, N8N is by far going to be your best choice. If you want to make something that's really great, that is going to kind of shock and wow and really, your customers aren't even going to notice that you're using automation, the N8N stack is the way to go. Now, if you want to just get started real quick and you don't mind that it's going to make some quirky mistakes and say some weird things, you don't really have very much control over how it works, and some of the things that I was listing before, then go high level might be the best way for you to go. Cost wise, it's a little bit more, but it's still, I would say affordable, and you can do some drip campaigns in your with go high level as well without having to pay a whole lot more. So cool. That's about those are the main things I wanted to go over with this. Like I said, just to run through it one more time. Zapier, messy, really expensive. I wouldn't go with this. Make much more reasonable price. More, and this is, I want to say that it's easy, that it's tougher than Zapier, but like I said, Zapier with this kind of automation, when you have 10 different workflows that are all stacked together and you're trying to make it work, Um, honestly, this might be even easier than trying to do it in Zapier. So, but I think that you can make a really good one with Make if you wanted to. But if you want to make the really the best one and get the best bang for your buck too, go with the N8N stack for sure. But if you don't really mind sacrificing performance, then go high level. Hopefully that makes sense. If I said something confusing, let me know, and we can. I'm more than happy to respond down in the comments. Cool. So, kind of going over the final cost for all your different options. You got Zapier, Make, N8N, Go High Level. This is how many closed customers you've got in each of these examples to kind of give you a rough idea of how much it's going to cost you. But feel free to pause the video and take a look at that a little closer. Now, I also want to go over an add-on drip campaign. So we're going to assume, like I said, if you already have Go High Level, there's not really an extra cost in here for that. Otherwise, you'll, depending on how many customers you have, if you're only closing 10 customers per month, it's going to cost you about $20. If you're closing closer to this 50 per month range, then you're probably going to be in that higher pricing tier. So it's going to cost you $45 per month. And this is especially if you're doing like a monthly newsletter as well, which you probably should be doing a monthly newsletter plus your drip campaign as well. I think it's like 20 to 30% of leads that come through are going to close during that drip campaign sequence, which involves like 10 additional touch points. So definitely worth looking into that. But if you have a drip campaign that involves email, text message, and uh yeah, these prices are wrong. Just you can just ignore this part here. That's not important. Yeah, okay. But yeah, total price, it's not going to cost you anything more. So it's just going to be $0 additional if you're already using Go High Level. Um, Otherwise, obviously, or it's going to cost this much more if you're not using Go High Level for the Go High Level stack, then it is going to cost you $147 to add on Go High Level. So that's something to keep in mind. But but yeah, so these are a couple different pricing options to look at for your additional drip campaign. Definitely worth it. Like I said, especially if you are wanting to do both a drip campaign and a monthly newsletter. Okay, and then comparison of kind of the strengths and weaknesses of each. Here's kind of my rating for how easy each of them are to use. Like I said, this is 5 stars, but it's not with what we're doing. It really should be like 2 stars or maybe even 1 star. Cost efficiency. Here's my take on that. The logic complexity. This could really even be um, quite a bit more complex, like I said, with what we were doing. Um, N8N is the most complex, but you get the most because it's more complicated. It means that you don't have a bunch of guardrails up, so that's why you're actually able to make it the best. Go high level, super simple. Integration power, best for text flows, some integrations. Um, this is a little bit off too. Zapier has a lot of integrations, uh, but you don't need to have those integrations. You're still able to integrate all of these things either way. So N8N, all the all the apps that you're trying to integrate, you can still integrate all those. It's just not as easy is the thing. So that's kind of where some of this ease of use comes to play. So I would probably, even give this 5 stars really on N8N. Uh, cool. And then really, but you're actually if you're when you're using APIs, everything can connect. So everything that we're using can connect just fine with APIs. It really becomes a question of ease of use. But now I'm starting to make things a little bit more confusing than they have to be, I think. Cool. And then if you're trying to scale to 1,000 leads per month, which is we're saying about 500 new customers per month. So that would mean you got 2,500 recurring customers. Um, Here's kind of my take there. Debugging experience. Zapier is not very good with debugging. Go high level is not very good either. It's very frustrating, in fact. N8N has really good debugging, and same thing with Make. Though it's a little bit messier than N8N. But yeah, those are some things to keep in mind when you're deciding which one you want to use. All right, cool. Now we're on to the fun part. So we just went over cost and ease of use comparison, the full tech stack, cost of the software, easy it is to build. Now we're going to break down all the features that you need to be confident that you're maximizing the number of customers that you close. Like I said, this includes everything from the time the lead is received by you up until they are scheduled and on the calendar, whether that's immediate or whether that is with a drip campaign. You really should have both. We're not going to be focusing on the drip campaign, just the prior in this video. Okay. Inbound lead capture. So it's called a webhook. Basically, this is something that is able to take that lead from Facebook or your website, sends it to the automation, and is able to get things rolling. So it receives a lead from the forms, ads or integrations, and immediately, or after a minute or two, is going to immediately send that text message, just introducing yourself as being a part of the company. Hey, how are you? Thanks for contacting us. And then you start to get some information from them, as if you're basically, like I said, essentially replacing your office staff or yourself. All the data should be stored in Airtable. So that's their name, the phone number, where they came from, whether it was a website form, whether it was a Facebook form. All of that is going to be stored there. Same thing with the conversation. You're going to store that in Airtable so that you can customize how you respond and make it more customized there. I think that's really important um, as well. You want to tag and Go High Level doesn't do that. Just as a side note, um, after like it kind of does, but not the way we I would recommend doing it. And then categorize the lead by the source or campaign. So so I put this down because there's lots of different types of forms. If you're using Facebook Messenger, all you have is their name, and you need to collect all the information after that. Name, phone number, email, address, how many dogs they have, or whatever. You need to find out all that information before you can close them. There are some forms where they give you everything and you're actually able to give them a price, and all you have to do is go in and put them on the schedule. So so you need to be able to tag that, and it really helps if you can actually just just make a record of that so that you can track metrics and to figure out where your ad spend is going and if it's worth putting money into certain areas or not. But you really should have this be a part of your inbound lead capture. Number two, AI messaging engine. So some things that you're going to want to have in there to keep in mind are when you send a message through Twilio or OpenPhone or Facebook Messenger. So you're gonna you can actually have all three of these hooked up, or really just Twilio or OpenPhone, one or the other, and then Facebook Messenger. So you should be able to get everything set up so you're able to respond to customers or your leads, these potential customers, either of these places. And unless you're not using Facebook Messenger, the uh, leads from that form, then you can just focus on Twilio or an OpenPhone. And then cool, route incoming messages with OpenAI. So like I said, you're going to need OpenAI is going to be kind of the brain of the operation. That's what's going to decide um, how it should respond. That's what's going to look at your pricing sheet and decide what the price should be. Uh, yeah, like I said, you give the instructions on what you want OpenAI to do, and you do need to be pretty clear about that. And yeah, like I said, if you're clear enough, then you'll be able to get correct pricing. You'll be able to schedule the customers on the correct days. You'll be able to talk to the customer in with a tone and a kind of a voice like you're wanting to. You can customize messages like I built my tech stack or my automation on an N8N tech stack, and I built it so that the initial message, depending on where it is or where it's coming from, I can customize how that message is going to look. Same thing with the message with the quote in it. I can customize that and kind of play around and test that so that it looks different and test which ways work the best. And I can also, and then the confirmation message is the same. Those three messages, it's built so I can talk to the customer with the kind of voice that I want to, so they have more of a feel like, hey, this is an actual person that is talking with me, and it's not just a robot. Um, you can also accomplish that by waiting 2 to 3 minutes to respond. You can set it up so it only responds during scheduled hours as well. For example, if you want the automation to only respond during between the hours of 7 to 9, I would recommend that. And both of these you can do these on Go High Level, um, no problem. So that's kind of nice. And then let's see here. But as far as uh, customizing the messages, especially those three that I was telling you about, that intro message, and then the presentation of your quote, and then the confirmation, uh, it's the Go High Level isn't able to do that. You are able to, with any of the other tech stacks, you are able to customize those three things if you build that into the logic. So I really recommend building that into the logic because it gives you the that ability to do this A/B testing that I was mentioning. And um, yeah, that way if you have if you want to just see which works the best, what is actually making your close rate the best, you actually have some data to do that, and you can actually control it as well. Um, cool. And then all right, custom prompt is tailored to your tone and industry. Kind of mentioned that one already. Include prior message history and output response using OpenAI logic. So yeah, we're going to be actually tracking we're saving the conversation history so that whenever we respond, we can refer back to that so we're not losing stuff in the back. Or if we're reaching out later on with some follow-ups, we can actually refer to some of the messages from earlier on instead of just making it just an obvious, just automated response that we just put out to everybody. So that's something that I think is really important. I definitely recommend saving the message history and tailoring all of your responses so that they pay attention to the message history and you're not losing anything as the conversation continues. You're going to want to parse and extract the AI generated response. Um, yeah, it's a little bit convoluted, but yeah, that really fits into here, to be honest. And then log the AI response in Airtable. Went over that too. So yeah, we're just gonna delete these 'cause we're at kind of the same thing. And then the oh yeah, and then yeah, we talked about this as well. I'm gonna leave this on here because it didn't I went off topic a little bit. This really should be on here still. But yeah, like I said, that helps us so you can match the brand voice and also test different openers and closers to see where you get the best response. Because obviously sometimes you're gonna have customers who fill out a form and they just don't even respond to your first message. So you can actually test and see which opener gets the highest response rate. You can test quotes and see which quote gets the highest response rate. I think this is probably one of the most valuable things in here, and not a lot of people are really talking about it. But yeah, super valuable. Um, Unfortunately, it's not available in the Go high level tech stack with conversation AI. So just be aware of that. Okay, and then conversation routing. All right, so you can automatically trigger a workflow on new inbound texts. So that just means as soon as you receive a lead, as soon as someone fills out your form, the conversation is going to start. It's automatic. You don't have to be in front of your phone. It'll just it'll also detect the response intent. So is the person asking a question? Are they asking for a quote? Are they, ready to schedule? It'll be able to figure out whatever it is that's going on and move the conversation wherever it needs to go. It should be able to update the lead status based on their response. You should be able to rerun the AI message engine for a reply. So in other words, this just means you respond, they get back to you, and it'll continue talking. That's kind of obvious that that's that's a part of it. So I'm going to take that off and then add a short delay if needed before the reply. So yeah, we talked about that, the 2 to 3 minutes to respond. Take that off here so we're not just doubling up too much. And then we're going to log the inbound message in Airtable. Again, that's up here as well. Sorry, some of this stuff is on here twice, but I'd rather be more thorough than forget something. And then also flag leads that need manual review. So in other words, so flag isn't really the best words, but the automation pauses. So if they're just say that it's a commercial client and they message in there they say, hey, I need a quote for an apartment complex. Those really need someone, a real person to go in because they can be really complicated or like individualized where it doesn't really make sense for the automation to take care of that. So that's a great example when the automation should be able to analyze a conversation and pause. And you're going to have to come up with all the rules for when it should pause and when it shouldn't. And cool, then next step is quoting and the close. So like I said, I think that when you build an automation like this, you should make it kind of the way I built mine, where you can actually choose what your opener is going to be and test out different openers. You can do the same thing with the quote, test out different quotes, see which one gets the best close rate. And then that final message, you can do the same thing as well there, but that I think should be customized too, just because the way you close can be a little bit different and gives you the chance to show that last little bit of kind of oomph when it comes to like showing excitement that you just closed a customer and they're a part of your company and your company culture and everything like that. Um, But yeah, it'll auto calculate the quote based on the zip code, the property type, and other details. So the reason for this is you may have certain days that you service certain areas. So if you're in one area on Monday and then on Tuesday you're an hour away from that area, you don't want someone to try to sign up for service on Tuesday that lives in the area normally serviced on Monday. So we've got to make sure that we've got some that this is built into the automation so it knows when to schedule people that you actually service. So all of this has to be built into those instructions that OpenAI is going to be able to understand. Generally, is kind of a side note, but also really important. You're going to want to split up the logic into different pieces. So you don't just shovel everything into one prompt. Otherwise, you start to things start to break and they don't work very well. Unfortunately, there are some services out there where that's what they do. They just shove everything into one or two prompts and just hope that it gets parsed out correctly, and it just doesn't. Um, the automation just doesn't work very well. It gets things wrong a lot. So if you break those up into little smaller chunks that are more easy for ChatGPT or OpenAI to understand, it's going to do a lot better. It's going to make mistakes a lot less frequently, and just overall, your automation is going to run a lot better. So yeah, those are some. I wanted to mention that. You should be able to send the quote via text message and kind of have a call to action like, hey, here's your quote. We can come out on Thursday if that works for you. Something like that. That should all be a part of it. And then you should be able to detect an affirmative response. Hey, yeah, this kind of customers are a little bit different are all different. So you may need to play if you're when you're building this yourself, you're probably going to have to play around with this a little bit just to make sure it's able to understand responses correctly, and should be able to update your status so that it knows when to actually turn off. For example, the reason I put this here is if you closed a customer and they text you as a customer afterwards, you don't want the automation to try to continue that conversation because they're already a customer. So you need to have either if you have an AI assistant that deals with customers, have that bot start to work. Or more likely, it's a little bit too complicated for an AI assistant to take care of that. So you're going to have an actual office person or yourself that takes care of just the customers who have been closed. But you want to make sure you don't have your AI trying to respond to somebody after they've already been set up. Um, and then last, they should create a job in Jobber, Sweep and Go, or whatever schedule you have. So all you have to do is just assign the technician. This is another feature that I think is really important to have in this kind of an automation. And yeah, then they'll get sent a confirmation with a time frame and the date. And cool, that's it. They're closed. They know the date that they're scheduled for, and the if they have a time frame like Monday on Thursday or afternoon on morning on Thursday or afternoon on Thursday, it'll it'll go over that will all be set up as well. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I didn't this is the only point where I actually talk about the time frame and the date, but this is really important that you have an AI that understands what day it is and what time it is and is able to actually schedule them at the correct date and correct time. Um, say, and this can that can be a little bit complicated too, because you don't want them to be scheduled for the same day. You don't want them to be scheduled for like next year. You want them to be scheduled as soon as possible. So more than 24 hours, but less than like 2 weeks, that kind of a thing. So the logic for that is a little bit more complicated too. It just takes a little bit to get that all correct, but once you got it made, it works really, really well. Cool. And then outbound follow-ups. So, say you have a customer who says, I got to think about it. I got to talk with my spouse and see what they say. And then they don't get back with you. You should have, as a part of your automation, a follow-up sequence where after X amount of hours or X amount of days, for example, ours, they get sent they get scheduled for um not the next day or not scheduled. They receive a message not the next day, but the day after that. So whatever you want to do, that should happen. And then if someone says, I'm not interested, it's got to be able to differentiate between those two responses and not follow up if they just say that they're not interested, or at least have a different sort of a sequence that they get entered into if they decide that they're not ready to buy at that moment. All right. And then logging data tracking. All messages need to be logged, both inbound and outbound, to maintain contacts within the conversation. Um, yeah, this kind of goes without saying, but those conversations and those messages need to be linked to the correct lead in Airtable. So you don't just track a bunch of conversations and just jumble them all together. If you're having a conversation with Haley, the conversation with Haley should be saved under Haley's name in Airtable, type of a thing. And yep, track current lead status. Talked about this already too. So I'll take that off there. Cool. Notifications and alert. I think that it's really helpful to uh to get a text message yourself every time a new lead comes in. So if you're the owner or you're the office manager, making sure that you get a text message so that you know that a lead came in. Same thing when it's booked, you should get that as well. This is kind of, I would say just really these two things is what you're going to want. All leads should be treated as high intent leads because they filled out a form. All right, and then admin controls and fail safes. So it's very helpful if you can retry on sometimes because you have a tech stack that's using several different things. Sometimes one isn't going to work or you need to retry on that. It's like loading a web page. Sometimes it's not going to work and you need to reload that web page for it to actually go through. It's the exact same with this. So you might have something break or fall apart or just doesn't get sent or respond. Okay, you don't get a response. So you should be able to have some way for it to retry if needed. It's helpful as well to have an option to manually reset or rerun the flow. Um, an alert if something doesn't go through. So if your automation just turns off or stops working for whatever reason, or you forgot to pay your OpenAI bill and they aren't processing anything anymore, you want to have your alert turned on so you don't have like days and days or weeks where you don't have your automation working and you're not contacting these customers because you forgot to pay your bill or something. So you should be alerted when something doesn't complete. Option to manually override the workflow or escalate. So say, if you have a conversation going on and you want to jump in and take over that conversation, you're not sure if it's stopped or if the automation is stopped or not, you should be able to manually jump in and override it. There should be some sort of an audit trail or a way to log and view each time the workflow runs, each time the customer sends in a message, you should be able to have a way to track that so that if there are any issues, you can take care of those. That's only available in N8N and Make. So another reason why I do not recommend Go high level and I don't recommend Zapier is if something goes wrong, you don't have the slightest idea what went wrong. And you can be banging your head against the wall for hours and hours trying to figure it out. All right, that's it for number 8. And then number 9, test past 100 conversations. So what I'm saying here is you don't just want to set up this automation and just keep your fingers crossed that it's going to work perfect the first time. It's not. You need to run actual customer conversations through it to be positive that it is going to respond correctly. I recommend 100 conversations. I think that's the best way to get all the quirks and bugs out of it before you actually let it loose on real customers. If you don't do that, you're going to have this is really super, super important. If you don't do this, you are going to lose customers and you're going to lose leads. So whether you're making an automation yourself or having somebody else do it, you have to have somebody run a bunch of previous conversations through and make sure that the automation is going through those correctly. So you never know what a customer is going to say. You never know what they're going to ask. So you want to make sure that all of your FAQs have been taught to the AI. You want to make sure um, that it knows what your prices are and is able to spit those out correctly. The days you service, that all of that is understood by the AI correctly. Sometimes you might have everything in there, but you're not very clear on how it was written. So these 100 customers will give you the chance to get out to kind of really hone in your messaging to the AI assistant so that it performs very well. But yeah, it's best to test it on past. So yeah, I would do it on past conversations, not active leads. Um, let's see, you'll get the chance to make sure that everything is working correctly. For the error handling, talked about this. Um, this will give you the chance to make sure if there ever is an error, you know how to deal with it correctly. This is where things really get technical, and you want to have things set up so if something does go wrong, you already know in advance how you're going to deal with it. And then there should be an audit trail or a log view per lead. So yeah, we went over that one. So that's important as well. Since that's here, we're gonna take that off. Alert if workflow is not complete. That was above here as well. So yeah, this is the main thing, but I gave this its own section because it really is important that you do this instead of just letting it loose on active customers. But cool, that's pretty much it. Um, Like I said, I think this is definitely something that you can go out there and build on your own with any one of these tech stacks. Hopefully, this is helpful in helping you guys decide which tech stack you want to use, and then B, all the different pieces that are going to be required so that you know ahead of time you can plan out and decide which tech stack you want to use, whether it makes sense to do this yourself or whether it makes more sense to hire someone else to do it. But if you'd like me to build this for you or discuss what you could do with this technology for your this technology or similar technology for your business, definitely reach out. I'd love to talk about what we can do for you and see if you don't want to do this yourself, you know, maybe it makes more sense to have us take over the automating process for you. Um, but in any case, yeah, let me know if you have any questions or comments. Hopefully everything was clear, but I'm more than happy to respond to any questions you guys have down below. There should be some links down there as well, so feel free to look at those. I think some of them will have um, I think I've got some links for like Airtable and OpenAI down there just so you don't have to search for those. I think one or two of them might give you a little bit of a discount when you sign up too, as referrals. But cool. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. And thanks again, guys.